Welcome, everybody. Hello. Thank you so much for being here. Coming at you live from New York. I'm Dayal here with the Chuta Gopi. This is Spirit Matters, your Bhakti Center podcast. How you doing this morning, Achuta?
I'm doing well. How are you
She's,
doing?
she's doing well. I'm doing well. We're all doing well. Well enough to keep going. And so we're glad that you're here. Um, 2 days ago, we were chatting about relationships. And I remember at the end, there was sort of this point about in spiritual life it 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 being something that we sometimes have to fight for, something we have to intentionally ensure that we have somewhere, and it can transcend um or has to go beyond sort of material likes and dislikes, because it's not just a matter of like, oh, I'm feeling less lonely, or oh, I have friends that I hang out with and I enjoy spending time with, but it's actually like I need fellow spiritualists in my spiritual life in order to progress. And so it becomes just like almost like part of your diet. Like, I need food, I need water, I need shelter, I need people in my life spiritually. And then, just pre-chat, we were talking, and you had a lot of good questions about that and things that you coming to your mind that I wanted to volley over to you to kind of share some of the questions and things and insights swirling around in your mind related to that. And then we can kick it off from there.
Sure. And I really like what you said. It's like it becomes part of the pyramid of our needs of our soul, right? We need food, water, shelter in order to keep our mind and body together. But then relationships also are an actual essential necessary part of our experience here. And I
Yeah.
think really looking at that and understanding that I feel like often there's such a big emphasis put on this monastic lifestyle, this monk lifestyle, which can feel or sound lonely or alone or better in solitude. But what happens when you're not in solitude? Like what part do even our like even romantic relationships, all kinds of relationships, what part do they play in our spiritual lives, if any? Is it
Mm.
my relationships with all of my friends? Those are spiritual. But then are our romantic relationships not spiritual? Sometimes I feel like it's easy for us to understand and see how taking care of children can be a service, and sometimes not.
Mhm.
What happens? What part does that play in our relationship? With relationships in our spiritual lives. And I ask this kind of because I've heard throughout my life, or even my parents have heard advice from other devotees,
Mm.
and you can hear this thing, oh, material relationships are to be given up.
Get rid of them.
Right. So then I'm like, well, then what what determines what is a material relationship and what's a spiritual relationship?
Mm.
Which ones of those are eternal and which ones aren't?
Mm. Let's start with me. What am I in your life? Material, spiritual?
You are undoubtedly a spiritual relationship.
Whew. Thought I was gonna be given up.
Can you imagine?
I'm gonna end up in the garage sale of Chutagopi's relationship yard.
Can you imagine? I'm having a relationship garage
I'm having a
sale.
relationship garage sale. I'll give
Everything
you
must go.
everything must go. I'm done with these people. Um, there is I appreciate that a lot, and I think that it is something that I think a lot of us, we have our spiritual life and our material life, our spiritual relationships and my material relationships, and oftentimes, in spiritual life, we sometimes experience this little bit of a schism in terms of who I am and how I show up in different places. And it can create a lot of pressure on the consciousness that I now have to put on a certain face, a certain hat, a certain persona when I'm around certain people. And it keeps us from the sense of integratedness of who we are. And I do believe that a lot of spiritual life is about getting to a place where we our spiritual life is just it's just who we are. It's not something we do on the weekends or in the evenings or once a week at a kirtan, but it just becomes like this is who I am. And I think that when we share spiritual life and share our spiritual life with others, it's a lot more disarming and easier to process and accept of other people if it's we're sharing it in a space of like, yeah, this is just who I am, than as opposed to like this intensity of like, this is what you must do. This is what you how you should also be. Um, and I think that when we get to that place, it's kind of like the way I look at it in terms of relationships is we once we have an understanding of who we are and a confidence and a security in that, and we can just be that, we find that the relationships that are our people, the people who are our people will find us, and
Hmm.
the people who aren't our people won't be attracted to who we are, and we don't need to go through efforts to try to keep them, because why that the effort that we go through in order to keep people in our life is in itself an act of self-abandonment, because we're stepping out of who we naturally are in order to try to convince somebody else to stay. And so I think that if we're in a space of trying to get someone's attention or convince them to stay and be a part of our life, that's a symptom of us stepping away or outside of ourselves. And if we're finding that we don't have the right, quote unquote, right people in our lives, or we're not surrounded by the types of people we want to be surrounded by, then we owe it to ourselves to ask, like, what am I doing that's attracting those kinds of people into my life? And how can I act in such a way that those people will no longer be interested in me? And the people that I want to have in my life will start to, like, it's kind of like you stick your flag in the ground, and then what's meant to orbit around that will orbit around that.
It's like Radhanath Maharaj often says about tuning into the frequency that you want to vibrate in accordance with. It's like
Yeah.
a radio station, right? Tuning into the radio station that you actually want. And then what happens is you start to attract more people like that. And I was kind of thinking as you were talking, in the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, we hear like Queen Kunti, she has five sons and this big family, and they've been in danger, and she's been praying for them consistently throughout her life. And then it comes down to it, and Krishna actually has saved her family once again. And then in her prayers to Krishna, she begins praying, take this all away. All of the familial relationships, all of the state relationships, political relationships, take it all away. I am meant for a more spiritual existence. Take this all away. And that can sound so confusing. I'm like, there's a woman who's been praying for her family for like decades and decades and decades. And now she's gotten face to face with the supreme person, and she's saying, take it all away. And in the purport, Srila Prabhupada makes a really fundamental, beautiful point. And he says, is Krishna actually going to take all of these relationships away? And then he answers his own question and he says, no, of course not. Because they're with devotees. They're actually with people that make her think of Krishna. And so,
Mm,
even though there's this kind of fear that, well, what's going to happen? I'm actually not the controller. I'm actually not the person who can save my family. Krishna is the only person that can save my family. And even though this has been fraught with anxiety and all of these things, and so it leads her to pray for this kind of like liberation from this anxiety, Srila Prabhupada then makes a point that that's actually not liberation. It's a devotional service.
mm,
Praying for your family members, praying for the people that you love is a devotional service. It is not outside the realm of our spiritual reality to
yeah.
pray for those people that we love, whether they are self professed spiritualists or whether they're just coming to the path. It doesn't mean that they have to identify as a bhakti yogi in order for you to pray for them, which I think
Yeah.
is wonderful. And like you said, if our spirituality just is who we are, then we don't have this thing, okay, I'm putting on my bhakti yogi coat now, and
Mm,
now this is how I interact with the world. It simply is.
yeah. And Martha had some really good comments here in the chat. She wrote, it is so hard to accept that some loving relationships are not as spiritual as we would like, and even harder to learn to live with those are not. And so there is, and this thing is a common thing, that when we enter into our spiritual practice, and really any phase of life, like if we all of a sudden have some higher principle or value that we're starting to live our life accordingly to, um, it naturally sometimes we 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 find that certain relationships are no longer as relevant to us as they used to be, or that they're no longer
Resonating on this.
resonating on the same level. Yeah, they're not resonating on the same level. And it's like, because the things that bonded us previously are no longer as part of my life today. And then you actually start to realize, like, what was the quality of the relationship? Was the relationship between me and them on a personal level, or was it just we both happened to like soccer, or we both liked shopping at the same places, or we both liked talking about the same celebrities, like, you know what I mean? Like, what was the level? And sometimes it's hard because the level of that relationship gets put into question, and um our identities are oftentimes wrapped into our relationships, and it becomes really, really hard to question those things. And then Martha followed up with a really beautiful point. She said, but are we not supposed to accept we are all spirit souls, and to Krishna we are all loving souls? And so this idea of like, but how do I not become then callous and insensitive and just discard people because, oh, you no longer serve my spiritual needs, and just kind of become like a spiritual asshole, basically.
Right? Yeah, right,
Can I
exactly.
say that word in this podcast? Am I allowed
Like,
to say spiritual asshole?
I mean, sometimes there's just no other way to explain it. I mean, really, it's
Yeah.
true. And you can think, I become insensitive, and I've actually seen it with spiritualists. And it's just kind of like, it's like, well, okay, you're chanting and you're doing all the things and you're reading and you're taking care of that relationship with Krishna. But when he shows up in your life through other people, how do you interact? And we've always said in my family, I was like, it's really important not to be a jerk. Over the weekend at Sadhu Sangha, I met a person and they said, I met you in maybe 2013 or something. And I listened to your kirtans and that was wonderful. But then I spoke to you and you said something really nice to me. And that's why I am a devotee here today.
Hmm.
And I thought to myself, I was like, well, thank God I was not a jerk. And that's really, it's really why, you never know the impact that you're having on somebody. And does that mean that we should then be best friends and all? No, but it's so important for us to remember that if we are just who we are, and we can be a nice person, then sometimes that makes all the difference in somebody's entire spiritual life. Now, what does that mean if we were in a relationship and that relationship is no longer resonating on the same level? What does that mean? Sometimes it's so important for us to not only look at, is this relationship vibrating at the level that I want, but also, now that I'm in this new space, am I able to give the same amount of myself? Am I was I actually giving my best self to this relationship?
Yeah.
Or was it kind of surface level stuff? Like you said, if we both like the same sports, we both like this or that. And even through Bhagavad Gita, we see Arjuna examining his relationship with Krishna. What does this mean? Now that you're telling me some new things about yourself, Krishna, you're telling me that like you're God and all this stuff, like what does this mean? And Krishna's constantly reassuring him, no, it's not just. And in Nectar of Devotion, Srila Prabhupada says that the basis of Krishna and Arjuna's relationship kind of, it ignited because they had the same bodily features, they had the same kind of likes and dislikes, they were in the same family, and so it kind of seemed like a no-brainer. They started like, hey, wow, you know what, look at how we look the same, look at how we have the same interests, look at how we're buddies. But now when it gets deeper and Arjuna's really starting to question his soul and his whole identity, he's now looking at Krishna going, but what is the basis of this? Do we still resonate? Like, what's happening? And
Hmm.
Krishna is constantly reassuring him, no, you're not envious. You love me. I love you. I'm not envious of you. We have such a deeper look at all the things that
Hmm.
we've been through. Look at all the trials and tribulations that we've gone through. And so Arjuna's like, but I feel like I don't even know who I am right now. What does this mean for us? And Krishna's constantly, he's just like, I'm gonna be here. I'm gonna be here. And don't worry. You're still relevant. We still resonate. It's gonna be okay. He's like, yeah, okay, sure. You think you want to go to the forest? Give that idea a try. See how it works out. See how it works out, even if you take me out of the equation. And I was just like, well, I don't think I want to do that, And he's like, and even when he comes to this realization that, oh snap, I think I've been really like good friends with this all-knowing supreme person. He's like, but I acted inappropriately. I put my feet on you, I put my head on you, I've done all these things. We've had some real conversations. You've had some, I mean, I've shown you some things where I don't know if I was at my best.
Hmm.
And finally Krishna's like, okay, good. Now you've seen the opulence and the majesty. Throw it all out the window. I'm just your friend.
Hmm.
How was it when I was just your person? Arjuna's like, well, that was wonderful. It's like, then don't worry about all that other stuff. I'm
Hmm.
just your person. So I think, what happens when we strip away all the majesty and all the things and we're just there for one another. How does that feel? Was I able to give my best? And if not, then how do I tweak that relationship where I am able to give my best? Where we are able to relate with one another on respectful terms, where we're there to be there for one another. And sometimes we come to the conclusion that I don't think I'm able to be there for you in the best way possible. Maybe we do need to tweak this relationship. Maybe we understand that this relationship can be brought to a new level.
Yeah, there was two questions coming to my mind as you were speaking, especially at the end there, that I think can be like a guiding light or principle in terms of how we navigate the shift of relationships as we move and progress in spiritual life. Because I think the danger that we fall into is when um, sometimes a shift in relationship is needed, or sometimes certain relationships need to end. They become complete. They've served their purpose, and some new relationships need to form. Like we need to deepen relationships, and sometimes the quality of just the status of relationship, it doesn't need to end, but it just needs to shift a little bit in terms of the position or the role that it plays in our life. And I think the challenge that we naturally come across when we do that is that we start to then associate whatever shift it is with a judgment towards the other person. Okay, this relationship seems bad because you're so bad and you're so materialistic and you're so this and that and the other. And then it becomes this judgment. And then that's when the harshness and the callousness comes into play, which is what Martha mentioned in her comment. Like, are we not supposed to accept that all are spirit souls? Yes, everyone's a spirit soul, you know? And so are the mosquitoes, and so are the cockroaches, and so are the birds, and so are the dogs, and so are the cats, and so are the tigers. It doesn't mean that I just invite them all into my life. Like, I also have boundaries, you know? Bed bugs are spirit souls too, but I don't want them in my house. You know, I don't need to criticize and judge them, but I don't want them in here.
And I
And
think we've hit upon the name of this episode. Bed bugs are living souls too.
bed bugs are living souls too, but doesn't mean you need to have them in your house. And I think also what happens is, can I maintain that level of spiritual respect
Mm.
with every living being, and at the same time recognize that not everybody plays the same role in my life relationally? And I think that no relationship is set in stone, and sometimes things shift because we're shifting and growing and morphing as individuals. And I think the two questions that come up, that not the only two questions but that can guide us, is the first one is what do I need? you know and like what are my needs and what is it that I'm looking for? And I think we don't ask that question often in relationships, like, what is it that I need and I'm looking to get from a relationship? And granted, we don't I'm the immediate thought that comes to my mind is, well, it sounds selfish, or it sounds like you're just using people. But the reality is that there is a need. It's not the only part of it. It's not the only reason of a relationship. That's why there's two questions. This is just the first one, about like, what is it that, because I genuinely, and so often what we find in relationships is that our needs aren't getting met, or what we thought we wanted from the relationship isn't getting met. Like, we all We'd be lying to ourselves if we said, I don't need anything from the relationships that I'm in. You know, whether it's your intimate partner, a husband or a wife or a boyfriend or a girlfriend or a parent or children or a friend or a coworker or a sibling, like whatever it is, just be really, I'm looking for companionship. I'm looking for intimacy. I'm looking for a fun time. I'm looking for financial support. I'm looking for reassurance. I'm looking for advice. Like for us to really know what we need helps us to actually understand which relationships we should be investing in and how to invest. And the second question is, what can I give? Because if we don't answer that question also, we find ourselves like in a space of like what actually like how much time do I actually have available? How much emotional energy do I have?
Wow.
You know, how much um interest do I really have? And we don't answer that question, and it just becomes like this awkward thing of like I'm either overextending myself or I'm not giving enough and I feel guilty. I'm just recognizing like, you know what? I don't, this is all I have to give. I don't have that much to give. And to own that.
Hmm.
And rather than saying, well, you're this and that and the other, and I can't, it's like, actually like, no, like I only got, I only got $10 and you need 50. Hey, can I borrow $50? I only got 10. I'm sorry, you know? And so to realize like, this is what I need. I know this is what I need. This is what I'm looking for. And, this is what I can give. Like there was this I just found this new account yesterday and I posted it. It was somebody said that just because somebody keeps you around doesn't mean that they value you,
Hmm.
you know? And sometimes we think it's like, oh, like where we place this value on somebody in our life without even taking the time to recognize like
Hmm.
why? Why do I want this person in my life? And so what do I need? What can I give?
Yeah, you made me give some like red table talk reactions. And it was because, I thought I had an idea of like the point that you were making. And then when you actually hit on the point, which is why I'm so glad that I really sat in this place of letting my friends finish. But when you actually hit on the point, it was not at all what I was thinking. And I'm a person who often I'll get into a
Mm.
relationship and then I give, and I'm really good at like figuring out what the other person needs, and then I'll give it to them without any forethought for myself. And so when you were saying what can I give, I was like, yeah, because I'm the person that goes into the relationship with the idea of this is a service. And then I'm like, I'll figure out exactly what they need, then give, 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 give. And what you were saying was actually no. Both of them, what do I need and what can I give, actually all have to do with me. They all have to do with me and actually nothing to do with figuring out what that other person needs.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's where I've been making my mistake. I see. And not even a mistake like that, but it becomes a pitfall for me because even in thinking, what can I give? I never think about me. That's a problem.
Mm.
You should not be abandoning yourself completely. And that's where I found my hangups and my kind of hiccups and those kind of uncomfortable positions because I'm never thinking about me. It's always just the service. And even, when you're little, it becomes a thing. It's like somebody says, when they teach you how to share, somebody comes up and they, oh, can I play with your toy? You give it to them immediately instead of saying, now, wait a second, I was playing with it. You can have it when I'm done.
Mm.
Nobody's teaching anybody the patience of the dynamic of like, sure, no problem, in a minute.
Yeah. I want this, give it to them now.
Right. It's like immediately everybody should have it. You abandon everything that you have of your own and you give it to the other person. And that should not be. That is not the way to create healthy boundaries. And like it starts when we teach it to kids at 5, 6 years old. Abandon yourself for every other relationship. And really it should be, okay, are you done playing with this? Well, when will you be done playing with this? Can you give it 5 minutes and then try it? And it begins to teach everybody else boundaries and how to treat you. And so when you were saying, what can I give? It really is an examination of myself. How much of me am I able to give? Which means we've really got to know who we are. And
Yeah.
that's so important. And so Martha is asking, how truly spiritual are we when we become spiritually selective? Extremely. This is what yogis do. They become spiritually selective. Do I have it within me to give to the world right now? No? Cool. I'm going to go and become spiritually reinforced. I'm going to go back to the source of all things, and I'm going to connect myself with the source of all things, recharge, build up, then I have some service to give.
Yeah. I love that, and I also wanted to mention on Martha's question. I'm going to save that for my takeaway. I want to hear from Kimberly, although I do think that the other alternative title of this episode can be "Stop Teaching Your Kids to Share."
Yeah.
Just we're going to get a lot of feedback. We got "Stop Teaching Your Kids to Share." Spiritual assholes. We've we've
And
we've
bedbugs.
crossed the boundary. Crossed the boundary. This might be our final episode. We love you, everybody. Thank you. So we've just been canceled, and it was fun while it lasted. It took us over the edge. Um, Kimberly, we got a few takeaways from Kimberly. What are we walking away with? What are our summary points? And then we'll each walk away with something and take it from there.
So today we're walking away with tune into the frequency you want to vibrate at, and you will attract people who will resonate on the same level. And then relationships shift sometimes, but we shouldn't be a spiritual jerk and just discard people. Bed bugs are living souls too, but we can still have boundaries and not want them in our house. um, but generally, we should always have respect for every living being.
Mm, beautiful. The takeaway point for me related to Martha's question was just really the remembrance that I'm not God. And I think like how truly spiritual are we when we become spiritually selective? I think God is the only person that can truly be unselective in the sense of giving the full amount of full love to every living being across creation.
And God doesn't even do that. God is
Mm,
actually selective. Like God says, He's like, I am in it. I'm in every single entity and in everything, but I'm still removed. He's like, but until that person comes and they come back around and surrender and give me the reciprocation, then I give them all of me. He's even selective.
yeah, there's the selectivity in the sense of reciprocating. Krishna mentions in the Gita, as one approached me, I reciprocate accordingly. But there's the capacity is there and the full availability is there.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, hey, when you knock on the door, I'm here, and I'm making the effort to reach out and to be available. And so that there's the selectivity and also the complete no discrimination, no sense of not being available for anybody. And so that sense of like full heart for every living being is in the capacity of one person, and that's God. That's Krishna. We don't have that. And so if I truly want to be unspiritually selective, go walk out in the door and invite a random person into your home for dinner. You know, go the next time you're in a store or start buying gifts for everyone that you see. Like we don't do that because naturally that we just it's crazy. 10 billion people in the world. Like why am I focusing on why do I love my kids more than other people's kids? That's being selective. If I'm truly seeing on every living being, God is the only person that sees every single person as a child of himself. And so for us, it's really going back to capacity and it
Mm.
reminding like I'm not God. And if I'm trying to play the role of God of saying like I just need to be everything for everyone, then it's going to lead to a burnout. And so it really, I think where the lack of selectivity comes is in saying, or the complete inclusivity is that I never judge anybody. I don't say anybody is less worthy. No one is less worthy of love and affection and belonging and care. But I am limited in my capacity, and therefore it's just a matter of me owning that. So that's what I'm walking away with. We can, I mean, feel like we can just go on and on and on, but I'm cutting it there.
Right.
Cutting. Cut.
Yeah. I think for me, a huge point is that self realization, self discovery, self encouragement is not selfish.
Mm, there it is. Mic drop. Done. See you tomorrow, everybody. Take care. Bye bye.
We won't see you tomorrow. We'll see you on Monday. But
We have Saturday and Sunday off. We'll be back on Monday. Thank you guys so much for being here. Thank you, Achuta. Thank you all for listening and tuning in. Love you guys so much. If you heard something that you appreciated, share with a friend. Let them know. Please be well. We look forward to seeing you again soon. Bye bye.